Well, good morning everybody from Circuit Zolder in the Netherlands. We've got qualifying just about heading out onto circuit now for the Prototype Cup Germany. This is the qualifying session that will set the grid for our first of two races that we've got over the course of this weekend. The first of those races taking place today. There will be a separate qualifying session where the times will be set by the other drivers that are largely sharing these cars. A few drivers are driving solo, but the other drivers will set the qualifying times in tomorrow morning's qualifying session, and that will set the grid for our second race of the weekend. So round 5 of the championship coming up for you later on, but the car's heading out onto what is a rather damp and a rather greasy Circuit Zandvoort here. Now, the cars had 2 free practice sessions yesterday, and the conditions yesterday were probably even worse than they were today. It was lashing with rain yesterday, and the circuit generally was awash with huge amounts of water that had dumped itself around the twists and turns and undulations of Circuit Zandvoort. So the car's venturing out now into, well, I say slightly dry conditions, slightly drier than they were yesterday, onto what is the 2.6 mile circuit. It's just under 4.3 kilometres, this reconfigured circuit, which had the changes taking place to it to accommodate the Dutch Grand Prix, returning to the Netherlands for the first time in many a year. 2020 was when all those circuit changes were made, which include now the fantastic banked section as you go through Herkenholz, and also that banked section, the final corner, through Arie Luijendijk Bocht. So out onto track they will go. In this session, the car that is going to be in the hands of Thomas Razella, he drives the number 1 car. Danny Sufi will be in the number 2 Conrad Motorsport car. It will be Julian Apotolo who's driving the BMT Muka Motorsport number 6 car. Antti Ramo goes on his own for RMS GT Racing in the 14. Equally as much also driving solo in this one is the Mulder Motorsport number 21 car in the hands of Keanu Alzari. And then what have we got? Number 30 will be Felipe Fernandez Laser. That's the Piccadilly Racing number 30 car. And then we've got the 3 Gibbert cars for this weekend, Gibbert Motorsports. So they have got the regular cars that we've seen out, the number 70, which will be in the hands of the man who was 4th in the championship last season, Valentino Castellano. The number 80 car for this session will be in the hands of Jakob Erbacher. And then joining the Muka Motorsport, joining the Gibbert Racing, the Momo car, the number 90 car in the hands of Sven Bart, debut in that car, which is the Ginetta. So it's nice to see the Ginetta G61 out on circuit. So all of the cars now sort of completing an outlap in reality. You can still see the rain lashing down on our cameras there. And the difficult thing will be for the drivers to try and work out where the grip is or isn't around this track. So most of them are on an outlap in reality at the moment. And you can see the plumes of spray that are coming out of the rear of these fantastic P3 cars. So in towards the braking area comes Danny Sufi into the pit lane very early on. We've got one visitor just working his way in. But that's working his way out of pit lane, isn't it? That's pit lane exit. And that is going to be, just heading out of pit lane now onto the circuit for a first exploratory lap. So that is Antti Ramo, I think. So the number 14 car of Antti Ramo, the Estonian driver. Now that car of Antti Ramo did have an engine change yesterday. I never got to the bottom of what the problem was, but the team were busy working. They'd got the whole of the engine out of the car and were in the process of dropping a new engine in it. Danny Sufi pushing on by the look of things, just heading round through Tarzan, and then starts to build the speed through the little kinks at Gierlach Bocht and up towards the bank section of the circuit. So round through Herkenholz, and then start to climb the car back out of Herkenholz and build the speeds as you head through Rob Stollermacher Bocht and up towards Skyflak at the top section of the circuit. See the plume of spray coming out the back of the car. And Danny Sufi, through the first sector of this lap, has understandably gone quicker than anybody has in the session so far. It's quite a short and sharp qualifying session as well. It's only 15 minutes. We've only got 10 and a half left already. But Danny Sufi is looking to try and press on and see what he might be able to do. However, he is no longer overall best through the first sector. It is now Keanu Alzari that has gone that little bit quicker. So over the start-finish line goes Felipe Laser at the wheel of the number 30 car. He has gone to the top of the times at the moment, 1 minute 43.001 from him, meaning for the moment, because he's done a couple of flying laps, whereas others haven't done quite as many as yet, he is 1.3 seconds quicker than anybody has managed so far. But Danny Sufi is still on a quick lap. We've also got Keanu Al-Azari that we need to keep an eye on as well, see how he might be able to get on. Next to the cars over the start-finish line now. It goes through, and I think that is going to be Keanu Al-Azari. Yes, it is. Does he improve? Well, he did through Sector 1 and Sector 2, but didn't quite knit it up together on Sector 3, unfortunately, so that has lessened his sector time. So he needs to try and hook together that final sector if he can. Danny Sufi, I should say, quick through the middle part of the lap, but I don't think he improved that time through, did he? Yes, he did, but he's still third quickest at this stage. So see what he might be able to do. Now Jakob Ehrbacher at the wheel of the number 80 car. Fantastic livery on that car as well, white with multicolours to it. Jakob Ehrbacher is looking to see what he might be able to do. I was told it was Jakob Ehrbacher that was scheduled to be driving that car in the first session, but it looks as though it might be Maxim Dietrichs that's behind the wheel of it. That's what's showing up on the timing screen. And you certainly cannot miss the BWT Mucker Motorsport car of Julien Apotelau, which again, is that a change of driver? No, it's not. No, he is still there, and he's fourth quickest at the moment. Quicker through the first sector than he's previously been as he heads up towards Skyflack. Nice clear track ahead of him as well, accelerating his way then up towards the next section of it. So that's turn 10 actually, is it at the moment? So heading around through the left-hander at turn 10 and then starting to build the speeds again. Fantastic looking cars, they sound glorious as well. Of course, the later iterations of the Prototype 3, LMP3 class, all starting to be released at the moment. Might be a season or so before we see those appear in the Prototype Cup Germany, which opened its season with a rather wet race at Spa, which didn't happen in the end. The whole event was cancelled, and then it had 3 races at the Lausitzring last time out, here at Zandvoort, and then they'll head to Hockenheim, to Nürburgring, and finish the season at Sachsenring. So over the start-finish line any second now, we should have Julien Apotelau, who was runner-up in the 2023 championship. What can he do? He goes through and has gone third quickest. Next to the cars over the start-finish line was the number 70 car, which was going to be Valentino Catalano, who finished third in the championship last year. He's just gone 5th quickest at the wheel of his Duqueine. But it's still Keanu Al-Azari that tops the times at the moment at the wheel of the number 21 car. Working his way through the provisional pole sitter, round through turn number 3, which is Hugenholzbocht. And starting to build the speed again as you head up the hill and through the twists and turns that bring you over Rob Stollermacherbocht and up towards Skyflack at the top section of the circuit. Now the car to watch out for on this lap, Julien Apotelau going beautifully well, but I would say Felipe Laser could be the one to watch at the wheel of the number 30 car. He's just gone through and has posted a 1 minute 42.558. That's half a second shy of the provisional pole time, but that was a quick lap at the wheel of his Ligier. So the Fricadelli Racing Team, Klaus Abelen is the driver that's sharing with Felipe Fernandez Laser over the course of this weekend. And at the moment, Felipe Laser set an absolute best through the third sector of the lap, so that was a very, very good middle section from him. But it's still Keanu Al-Azari that's fastest of all at the wheel of the Duqueine. The Ligier of Felipe Laser's second quickest, and it's Duqueine again, which is going to be Julien Apotelau. And then it's another Ligier, which is Danny Sufi. Now, Antti Ramo at the wheel of the number 14 car is slowest of those that we've got out on circuit at the moment, Antti Ramo, so he's got a little bit of work to do. Say, maybe just still a few little gremlins following that engine change that was taking place yesterday in the garages. And that's why the number 14 car, in the hands of the Estonian for RMS GT Racing, is at the back provisionally of the grid at the moment. Still got 5.5 minutes to try and hook the lap together, but it's taking at the moment about 1 minute and 3/4 to do one, so we can get, what, another 3, maybe 4 laps before the checkered flag flies, and that will set the grid in reality for the first of the races of the weekend, round 5 of the championship. And then we'll repeat that, say, tomorrow with another qualifying session where the second drivers will take over. So the bank section at Harry Lyondike building the speed over the start-finish line. Now up towards the braking area for Tarzan. Heavy braking, I've got to be so careful how you brake for this one. And Felipe Laser that time through again, through Sector 2 and Sector 3. The middle part of the lap is where he's really gaining time. He improved his time last time through, 1 minute 42.037, and was just 18 thousandths of a second shy of the pole time that still resides with Keanu Alizari. Keanu Alizari is also on a quick lap this time through at the wheel of the number 21 car. So Felipe Laser starting to build the speeds again as he heads up towards Sky Flak. Nice clear track ahead of him. And have worked out exactly where the grip is now. Look at the plumes of spray that are coming off the tail of these cars. Onto the brakes, through Mastersbocht, and then up towards turn 9 and turn 10. Over the start-finish line comes Julian Botelau. Does he improve? The answer is no, he doesn't. The next car over the start-finish line also not improving. And then through also goes number 21 car, which is the provisional pole sitter, Keanu Alizari, who started the lap well, absolute best through the first sector, didn't quite improve through all the other sectors, but knit them all together, and that's an improved pole time from the number 21 car, 1 minute 41.933. Still only on pole by a tenth of a second at the moment at the wheel of the Mulner Motorsport car. Yellow flags at turn 1, and that's one of the Gibbet cars that is off, and that must be the number 80 car of Jakob Ehrbacher, or the one that we were led to believe was Jakob Ehrbacher. So the timing screen showing that it's Maxim Dietrichs that's behind the wheel of it, and he's managing to reverse the car in the gravel trap at Tarzan. So can't quite see the car with where he's positioned it. Our two cameras can't quite exactly pick out the full car. Now he's quite close to the wall as well, and the red flags come out as a result of that. There wasn't long to go in the session. Now, just as the red flags come out, it does look as though Maxim Dietrichs has got the car going again, all the way through the gravel trap onto the tarmac runoff on the outside of it. Should be able to rejoin. The clock stopped with 3 minutes and 25 seconds to go. Which begs the question as to whether we'll see a restart for this one, or whether that might be the end of the qualifying session. Look at the gravel in the front of the car. You can see he's gone all the way through the gravel trap, and that will have all been sucked into the air intakes at the front of these LMP3 cars. So he needs to take it steady as he heads back towards the pit lane. If he jumps on the brakes, all of that gravel will end up on the circuit, but he's doing the sensible thing, taking it nice and steady as he trundles his way back in towards the pit lane. And then we'll wait and see as to whether we get any sort of restart for this one. So the race that we'll see later on over the course of this afternoon, the 5th round of the championship, if we include the round that didn't take place at Spa-Francorchamps, scheduled to be a 55-minute race plus 1 lap thereafter, and that's scheduled to take place around about 2:15, 14:15 Central European time. That'll be 13:15 British summer time if you're watching in the UK. Not quite sure summer's been the appropriate word to use, has it, over the course of the last month or so with the weather that we've had. So all of the cars under the red flag conditions trundling their way back down the pit lane. They're all parking up back with their respective crews at the moment. Keanu Alizari fastest of all by just a tenth of a second at the wheel of the number 21 car, so he parks back with the Mulner Motorsport team in the pit lane, driving solo this weekend at the wheel of the Duqueine. So we've got Duqueines represented on the grid, the Ligier, and of course we've got the Ginetta for this weekend of Sven Bart and Michael Herrisch. So the team's still going to work, just adjusting the tyre pressures on the control tyres that all of the cars use. And then once we've got all of the cars back in the pit lane, it does sound as though we are going to see a slight resumption of this session. There's the familiar Momo colours of Gibbert Racing, who've got a very nice stable of prototype cars. So that car at the moment, the number 90 car, is 7th fastest in the hands of Sven Barth. That's the Ginetta that's new to the championship for this weekend. The best time that we've had from Sven Barth so far is 1 minute 44.474. If he can improve by 4/10 of a second, then he might be able to promote himself a place up on the grid. And we're now only about a minute away probably from getting a resumption of this session. Now, clock stop with 3:25 to go. Official confirmed restart time is 9:35, and we are ticking away towards that. Valentino Castellano sitting in the pit lane as well at the wheel of the number 70 Gibbart car that he shares with Marcus Pummer, who was the champion last year. And all of the cars now starting to trundle their way back down towards the pit lane. Green light is on at the end of the pits, but for Gibbart Racing and for Maxim Dietrich, I should say, there's work to be done for the team there to get all of that gravel out of the front of the car. And as you can see, it is Maxim Dietrich, so that's confirming that the driver we were expecting, which was Jakob Ehrbacher, to be in this qualifying session, isn't doing it. So that means he will be qualifying the car tomorrow, the way that it works in the championship. One driver qualifies on one day, sets the grid for race number 1. The other driver qualifies on the second day and sets the grid for race number 2. It also means that whichever driver qualifies on one day, they also start the race as well. So in reality, this also tells us who the starting drivers are for the race later on today. So green flags. Of course, everybody's got to do an outlap again. And with only 3 minutes and 25 seconds remaining on the clock, they can't really hang around on this outlap. If they do, then they're only going to get 1 flying lap in. If they can nail the outlap, they might just be able to squeeze 2 flying laps out of this one. And with the conditions continually changing here at Circuit Zandvoort, you know, the wet rain blows in 1 minute and it eases off the next. It looks as though it's perhaps coming down a little bit heavier again, but that's largely because the plumes of spray look larger, and that may well be just because we've had the brief red flag with cars not circulating, and therefore the water just builds up on the surface. See the amount of spray coming out of the rear of these cars. The Michelin tyres working well to try and remove the water, and certainly yesterday the plumes of spray were even bigger. Visibility also is the issue, so most of the drivers probably will just make sure they've got a bit of a gap to accelerate into, because it's not going to compromise their lap then, as they now head onto a flying lap, and also their visibility is improved as well. So over the start-finish line goes Danny Soufi, followed shortly thereafter by Julien Apotelau. And then the next of the cars up towards the break, I think that was going to be the Fricadelli car, wasn't it, of Felipe Laser. So Danny Soufi is the first of those onto a flying lap. We'll try and keep an eye as to what the sector time looks like through the first sector of the lap. It might just take probably a couple of laps to get everything back up to temperature once more. And we've got one off, I'm afraid. And that's the number 1 car that's off, and that's Thomas Gransea that's off at turn number 1. Tarzan in the gravel trap. Didn't quite get as far, I'm afraid, as Maxim Dietrich did. But that's going to bring about the red flag once more. And now there's only 51 seconds to go, so even if they try and restart, the cars are not even going to get an outlap in before the checker flag would fly. So I suspect that now, without question, is going to be the session, confirmed as finished, but we'll wait and see until race control do that, in which case the grid will largely now be set with Keanu Alizari at the wheel of the Duquesne, no doubt with a big old smile on his face, because he has qualified on provisional pole, as it will be for the moment, with a 1 minute 41.933. He's the only driver into the 1 minute 41s as well, because it's a 1 minute 42.037 from Felipe Laser, the first of the Ligiers on the grid, second quickest. Then about 9/10 off that is Julien Apotelau. He's in a 142.9, but there's only 1/1000th of a second between him and Danny Soufi. So the time from Julien Apotelau is 1 minute 42.953. For Danny Soufi, it's 1 minute 42.954, just 1/1000th. That's literally the blink of an eye, and no more than that. So for Mullner Motorsport will be very pleased indeed with what Keanu Alizari has done in this qualifying session. And for Keanu Alizari, he's not had the best of the starts to the seasons, really. First of the races at Lausitzring, he finished 4th. He was in the top 6 in the 3rd of the races at Lausitzring. But for pole position, it's a great start to what is a double-header weekend here at Zandvoort. It was a triple-header at Lausitzring. So being dragged down to the gravel is Thomas Gransea. Into the pit lane, trundle all the rest of the cars. And no confirmation as yet as to whether that's the end of the session, but on the basis that most of the cars are now being pushed into the garages or are driving into the garages, that probably tells us all that we need to know, that that is it for qualifying for round 5 of the 2024 Prototype Cup Germany. in what were tricky conditions. I said, you know, it was damp, it was greasy. Most of the drivers yesterday that I were chatting to just saying there was just no grip out on the circuit. It was really, really difficult. So it was an interrupted day of free practice and testing and qualifying for some of the supporting categories here yesterday. And case in point in that qualifying session, a couple of cars, small mistakes, but the problem is that small mistake when it's damp and greasy in tricky conditions, no car's damaged, that's a one good thing. But skitter off into the gravel trap, 2 red flags in that 15-minute qualifying session, and that is probably now going to be it. Yep, so all of the cars now back into the garages, with the sole exception of the car that brought about that second red flag, which is Thomas Grandsea at the wheel of his Duqueine for Racing Experience, the Luxembourg-based team. So he's making his way in towards the pit lane. The remaining course vehicles just heading out to do a covering lap of the circuit to check that everything is ready to go for our next session here, one of the supporting races to the 5th round of the Prototype Cup Germany. So let's have a look back at some of the highlights from the qualifying session that we've just seen. So the early stages of the session, you could see the distinct lack of grip as cars were trying to accelerate their way out of the pit lane, and that, I suppose, set the scene for this 15-minute qualifying session as the cars ventured out onto a very wet, a very damp Circuit Zandvoort. Lights on, wet track were the signs that were displayed there in the pit lane. And I suspect that for most of the drivers, the wet track was something that they were more than aware of on the basis of how awful the rain has been over the course of the last 24, 48 hours. So in the early stages of the session, times were being set by Danny Soufi, who was going particularly well, but we also saw good times coming in from Felipe Laser in the early part of the session, whilst also Julien Apotelau was looking to press on at the wheel of his BWT Muppet Motorsport car. Difficulty was for drivers, as soon as they got close to some of the other cars, they were getting spray in their face. So the early times, the early pace being set by the number 70 car as well, that was going well in the hands of Valentino Castellano, the man who finished 4th in last year's championship, teamed up with the champion from last year, Marcus Pommer, so they'll be hoping for good things this year, and have already started their season particularly well, having been on the podium in all 3 races that we've had so far. A first, a second and a third is their tally so far in the 2024 championship season, and Castellano was setting some good times early on in the session before the first of 2 red flags that we saw. The trouble is that the first corner being Tarzan, it caught a couple out. It certainly didn't catch out the number 30 of Felipe Fernandez, but it did catch out Maxime Dierix, who popped the number 80 Gibbert Motorsport car into the gravel trap. That brought about the first red flag. He returned to the pit lane with the car undamaged. But then in the restart of the session, it didn't take long before Thomas Grandsea dropped himself into the gravel trap. The second red flag also brought about the end of the qualifying session. So all of the cars have returned to the pit lane. We look forward to seeing them back out on circuit. They are scheduled to be back out on circuit around about 14:15 Central European time. If you're watching in the UK, it's around about 13:15, and we'll bring you round 5 of the championship for the Prototype Cup Germany later on this afternoon. Thanks for joining us at Circuit Zandvoort. We'll see you for the race, round 5, later on today. Goodbye.